There's something going on. Crowd loving it. It's a ball, fly ball. Home run!
3, 2, 1. Alright guys, so if you know where we live, if you are on our website at all, you realize we live in Toronto. So, we have sort of a little bit of a bias when it comes to the Blue Jays. Ryan especially, I mean, I'm an Angel fan, but I would definitely say my second favorite team would be the Blue Jays. So, this trade from the Miami Marlins to the Toronto Blue Jays has sort of created a little bit of a buzz in this city.
A little bit. This has bumped just about everything off. TVs, the newspapers, the radios, and anybody who knows anything about Toronto market, the lockout is the #1 story. And when the lockout's not the #1 story, the lockout's the #2 story, and the lockout's number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 top stories in this town. And this one bumped it all off, even just for a little bit. And now, to fast forward a little bit, the fact that Bud Selig is reviewing it is even bigger story.
So let's just break down the trade as it stands right now. Looks like the Marlins will send the Blue Jays Josh Johnson, Mark Burley, Jose Reyes, John Buck, and Emilio Bonifacio. That's what I want to say. And in return, and they'll also send $4 million. In return, Yunel Escobar, Henderson Alvarez, I can't even say his name.
Danny Echevarria.
Jeff Massett,
Justin Nicolino, Jake Marisnik, and Anthony Descalafini.
So without getting into how we pronounce these names, the last three, of course, were prospects, top 10 prospects in the Blue Jay organization. I think it was Baseball America had one of them as number 2, one as number 5, and one as number 8. So the Blue Jays did give away a lot of talent, but you have to give something to get something. And of course, getting Josh Johnson, Mark Burley, and Jose Reyes is getting something.
Well, and this is the thing, right? This deal, if you break down the deal itself, I think the deal has some real positives for both teams, and obviously some big question marks. I mean, when you're dealing with prospects, you never know how they're going to pan out. Henderson Alvarez and Yunel Escobar are both everyday players, depending on how deep your lineup is. They're not flashy, they're not outstanding. Alvarez still has some room to grow, but outside of that, I mean, it's Jeff Mathis is Jeff Mathis. We got Buck from Mathis. They're almost the same kind of guy, backup catcher, serviceable guy. But you don't know the prospects, how they're going to pan out, so there's some ifs there. You look at the Toronto deal, you got some players with some age and some injuries and big contracts. So if this deal works out for the Jays, they get a great addition to their starting lineup in Burley and Johnson, and they get a great leadoff hitter and a pretty effective shortstop. Although there's a lot of money attached to these guys, so I think that both sides have a lot of what ifs, but I think the upside for both teams is really good. Although I understand Florida fans and fans of baseball, or baseball people who do not know about these Jays prospects, would be up in arms over this deal.
Well, basically, if I look at this deal, I think the Marlins got a lot. I don't consider necessarily Yunel Escobar something of a win, but basically, I think what's happened is Escobar was sort of wanted to be out of this market for a while. Did a homophobic slur on his black paint under his eye at one point. Henderson Alvarez is a young pitcher, 22 years old. I mean, he's just getting his taste in the major leagues. I think that's a good young player. Echevarria played a little bit last year with us. And then you have 3 young draft choices, prospects through the Blue Jays system. And the new manager of the Marlins, Redmond, is a Blue Jay former manager of one of their minor league teams, so he knows the prospects coming out of the Blue Jay organization. So
right, he would Mike Redmond.
Yeah, so he would be sort of insider on what the Blue Jays have to offer, and therefore if you see the prospects going over, he knows those prospects inside and out already. As I've said to Ryan in just our sort of off mic talking about it, I think the key to this is I think Reyes is a great leadoff man, especially for the lineup that has Batista, Laurie, and Edwin in the lineup. I think the issue that I have is that Reyes does have some issues with his knees already, has a big contract, playing on AstroTurf may not be the best thing for him. Saying that, I think if he can prove that he's healthy, you pay him whatever you want. He's a top 3 shortstop, no questions asked. Mark Burley is going to be 34 this year. Guy still pitches 200 innings, but I don't know if he's necessarily like the top of the end line pitcher, but he's a good left-handed pitcher, gives you quality innings, goes from there. I think for me the key to this deal will be Josh Johnson. Either he comes in the form like he was in 2010 for the injury, or he's the guy you got last year after the injury where he went 8-14. And if he comes the guy who was before his injury, he's a top of the line pitcher, one of the best in the major leagues, and at that point you need to sign him to a long-term extension. If you can't sign him to a long-term extension, I think the Blue Jays may be losing out on this deal.
Right, and I've heard some talk, I don't know how true it is, that through his agent or through whoever that talked to his agent, said that he wanted to test the free agent market regardless. This is before the trade, that there was talk he was going to become a free agent, or when he became a free agent, he wanted to test the market, and that Toronto may not be high on his list. I also talked to somebody about Burley, who said that his no-trade clause, that Toronto, when he was asked last year or the year before about being traded, that Toronto was not on the list of teams that he gave, that he would okay a trade to. So I think both of those players, I don't know that either one of them really want to be in Toronto any longer than they have to be, which is part of the problem with Toronto the last several years as a team, right?
Well, it made Toronto more of a big market team, which is they should be, because Toronto is a big market. Anybody who doesn't know, Toronto is one of the biggest market teams in North America. I think they're just below New York, LA, and Chicago. And there's Houston, and
top five,
and there's Toronto.
So top five several years ago.
So they should be up there. They should be spending the money. I think the issue is that there is this sort of stigma that has come to the city in all sport. But anyways, like I said, going back to it, Toronto makes this deal. Everyone's happy here. I think if they put these players into the lineup this year, I think they become a contender this year for sure. I'm just a little bit wary if they can't sign Josh Johnson, that they've given up these three top end prospects along with Hechavarria and Henderson Alvarez. Like that's
there's some
young
talent
players.
there. This was a club that traditionally the last few years has been known for their farm system. They've had a deep farm system, and we as Jays fans have been waiting for these kids to sort of come along. And it's kind of tough when you're waiting for that. We've been patient for how many years now? 19, 18 years, whatever, since the last World Series. And all of a sudden they're gone. I understand that next year, 2013, may be the year to make a run at the AL East because everyone else in that division is hurting like crazy. So I get it. You salvage a little bit of, you get rid of your prospects and try to salvage it with some big name players, hoping to make a run this year. The cupboard's not bare though. There's still a lot of prospects.
There's a
back
ton of
there
prospects that still remain. And this is why you have prospects, because you can trade these guys for players, and that's what you do.
Now, what worries me, about this whole deal, along with some of the what ifs that come with this deal on both sides, you were mentioning the batting order. If you put Reyes first and Lowry second, Bautista third, and Encarnacion fourth, my biggest question mark there, even if you put Rasmus second and Lowry fifth or sixth, is Encarnacion. I don't know. He's a one-season wonder at this point. He might be the guy in that order for me that I'm worried about most.
Yeah, I think you have to be worried about him. You have to worry about Lind as well, if he can bounce back eventually from what he was at one point, because he would be either your DH or your first baseman as well. Yeah,
and I'm, as I was saying in one of our earlier podcasts, much further back, I'm done with Lind. The fact that they outrighted him already this past year, I think you got to find somebody else to work with on that position. But anyway, I think the Jays definitely did well. I think both teams did well. It's just it's a here and later, and now and later situation. I think the Marlins do well later on down the road, but right now I understand why Florida fans are pissed. I think it has more to do with the feeling that they were duped to get that stadium built. And they signed all those free agents, and then now they're gone. Now they're a complete total rebuild. I can see why they're pissed. I don't like the idea that this is taking as many days as it is for Seelig to approve this deal. I get the fact with 12 players, there's a lot of physicals that have to happen. There's a lot of paperwork that has to be processed. But I don't like the fact that Seelig is actually looking at this deal, because I did not like in the NBA when they got rid of the Dwight Howard deal to the Lakers because other GMs complained about it. I don't think that's right. So this concerns me a little bit that Seelig is now apparently looking at this deal to review it. He could have been a little more clear in his press conference today. Instead of just saying, I have to look at it, I have to review it, he could have said this is standard operating procedure, blah, blah, blah. I'm just here to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, as opposed to being a little more vague, which I think put some concern in the Toronto media and the Toronto fan base that he may actually step in and block this trade.
Well, anyways, guys, this trade, if it goes through, we'll be back at it, probably talking about it for months on end before the season begins. The hope is that Toronto won't be done dealing yet, not because they don't have a lineup that can produce now, but they do have a gluttony of catchers. Bringing over Buck and getting rid of Mathis doesn't solve the issue. They still have Bobby Wilson, they still have JP Irian, and they have Travis d'Arnaud, who's the top prospect in the Blue Jays organization.
I'm looking for a left fielder.
So look for maybe a trade at some point, or a signing of maybe a left fielder to complement the Blue Jays roster. And in Miami, hopefully they turn around and use this money somewhere else. But I think if I'm a free agent, I'm very wary of signing in Miami now. All right, guys, we'll be back at you with more Toronto Blue Jays baseball, MLB baseball, whatever you desire. We will be on it like peanut butter on toast.
Stink on a skunk?
I don't know. We'll see. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks, eh? Check out the website, www.onesecondleft.com. Eh?